now, and understandably, we kind of link commerce with feeling distanced from each other.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the stuff in this room comes from Target. I don't have kind of a sense of like meaning behind the objects or a feeling of like, I made this, or somebody I know made this, or like them relating to some kind of lived part of my life or my community. And so it feels like the story of commerce first exists as something where people are in community with each other. And then it's become something that makes us feel extremely alienated from each other.
I think that is like precisely the narrative arc of human consumption over time.
Wow.
The vast majority of human history, people provided certain things for themselves. Like before the advent of, garment factories, the women in families generally were spinners and weavers and people who could make, raw materials into cloth and then into clothing. A lot of things were done by hand in a way that doesn't really exist in any appreciable scale now. So I don't want to discount the fact that those processes were largely more domestic and less commercial.
Right.
But you still get to the point where you have, think about like the Silk Road. This is thousands and thousands of years ago where people were, going out and finding things that were unavailable to people where they lived and acquiring those things and then reselling them to people in places where those things didn't occur naturally. And this has been a process. This sort of like globalized trade has always been an element of human life. It's just the scale to which that determines the objects and people that you interact with has changed a lot. People in the Middle Ages probably bought more stuff than we realize they did. There's evidence that people, went to bakers and bought bread and went to, bought meat from other people and went to baths. Humans in complex society basically can't live without commerce is like an important way to understand why consumerism is so central to life now, because it really does play on this sort of like very essential cooperative way of living that people have had for a really long time. And it just sort of like takes the cooperation out of it.
Wow. Yeah. And I mean, of course, it makes perfect sense to think that like really throughout history, when we have been able, we have outsourced things to other people in our community, depending on how you use that term, because there's just only so many things that a human being, A, can be good at and B, has time for. So it's like either you imagine that people in history were just fundamentally very different from us, like less frivolous, less interested in stuff, way more capable, way more rugged, like to think about people going to like a nice sort of spa bath in the Middle Ages conflicts with the idea that people in the Middle Ages were like entirely busy dying of the bubonic plague.
Right.
Or like writing in a manuscript.
In humans, inherent in humans is this real desire for pleasure and for beauty and for leisure and for all of these things that
people act like were invented in 1975.
Right. And that people act like are entirely induced by modern forces, and that if you can just, free yourself, free your mind, that you can get past. When in fact, these are like essential elements of being human, and they're the things that get exploited in order to create consumer culture. When you look around at the people around you and don't understand their role, and like often don't understand your own role, or have this like deep and abiding sense that maybe your role is like bullshit. Maybe you're not doing anything valuable with your time. Maybe you are alienated from your purpose and your humanity by the work that you do. That creates like a lot of like psychological tension for people, I think. Because if you can look at someone and go, oh, that person is a farm worker, they harvest the food that I eat, that you understand your relationship to that person and their relationship to their work and your relationship to their work. And when you take out all of the jobs from a country or a society that are, toward the creation of the material goods that the society needs, you take out a lot of jobs that are sort of like fundamentally understandable and that fundamentally sort of like tie people to each other and to the work that they do. And what you get is like a service economy, which is what the United States basically has and what the beginning of consumerism implemented.
So what's a service economy?
This is basically like where we're at in the United States right now, is that we have an enormous amount of people who they are sort of at the whims of the general public and are sort of beholden to the spending habits of the general public in like a really direct way. Like those are generally jobs that are not organized, that don't have like a strong union presence in them,
right.
Less likely to be full-time benefits positions. They're jobs that tend to be much more seasonal, lower paid. You sort of trade manufacturing jobs, which after industrialization, when unions became much more popular, you trade those jobs, with outsourcing, with globalization, to other economies where they also become worse. Those jobs get worse for other people who are now doing them. And then the jobs that are remaining for people who might otherwise be doing them are also worse. Labor costs a lot, and the people who run the economy are generally trying to limit it.